Hello everybody, this is Hammer Striker here. Today I've got something kind of special. It's the CZ TS2 Orange. So the TS is Tactical Sport, which is their higher end competition line, and the TS2 is the latest iteration of that. So the TS2 replaces the TS. The Orange, whenever it appears, is the top of that particular model line. So in this case, the Orange is the top of the TS2 line. Previously, the Orange would have been the top of the TS. And like the Shadow series, that any of them that have an Orange, when you see an Orange, it's the top of that line. At the moment, with the exception of the A01 Custom, this is really the top of the line in CZ's competition guns. And there's a few things that you'll find that are different on the Orange than on the other ones. There's more hand fitting, more tuning. And as I mentioned, this is a competition gun. This particular one is chambered in 9mm. However, most people that do competitions actively tend to have a preference for 40. So these are kind of rare at times with spurts of availability. So CZ will release a batch of them and they'll be available for a little while, and then they dry up and you can't find one anywhere. So if a TS2 is something that you're interested in, watch for it. When they become available, act on it, because they won't stay available. The 9mm is a little less common because the competition crowd is less desirable of it, but even the 40 can be hard to find. So we're currently in a series where a batch of them were released, and there's some availability of them, and they're out there so that you can find one if you're looking for them. They come with 3 of these 20-round magazines. If I don't drop the magazine, 3 of these 20-round magazines, and they have an orange base plate to match the orange grips. The grips are aluminum. They've got some pretty good texture on them. They're kind of an aggressive texture, but they don't hurt. They don't tear up your hands, but they're really nice looking. And as you can see on the front strap, and you can kind of see the back strap, there's a significant amount of texturing as well. So this gun is meant to stay put in your hand. Even the mag release has texturing on it, and it's orange like the grips. So this gun is bone stock. This is exactly the way I took it out of the box. I haven't changed anything. And this is what you see. Now, they've made several changes between the TS and the TS2. One thing I almost failed to mention is the mag well that is tapered and beveled to make it easier to get the magazine in correctly and quickly. Again, competition. It's all about how fast you get the gun back in action to get on to the next target. So this has got a lot of optimizations for target shooting. So some of the things that are different between the TS2 Orange and the TS Orange are the mag release. The paddle's a little bit bigger on the TS2, but it protrudes less from the gun, so it's more recessed. It's still out there, and if depending on where your thumb goes, you'll catch it, but it's easier to get to, and it doesn't stick out and catch on your thumb as much. The gas pedal, they call this the gas pedal, and I'm probably not doing this right. I haven't gotten a chance to spend a lot of time working with this gun to learn how to use this thing properly. But you put your thumb on it and it helps keep the muzzle down, helps improve control. On the TS2, it's longer and more pronounced and bigger, so that there's just more place to get your thumb, and depending on the length of your thumb, there's more options for getting your thumb on it. The safety has been raised and is more out of the way, but still easy to operate. And I find it difficult. Oh, you gotta have it cocked. So I find it a little difficult to thumb the safety on. I find it more easy to do that, but it's easy to thumb it off. It's easy to get to. But it is raised a little bit, so if you've got bigger hands, you don't find the safety biting into your hand. And that can be important because it is ambidextrous. So generally what you'll find is if the safeties are lower and large, they bite into the opposite hand. These don't do that. The slide stop, slide release is a little bit larger and easier to get a hold of. And they've improved the serrations. There's more serrations, more towards the front, as well as serrations at the back. And they're bigger, they're more pronounced, and there are even some on the top for somebody that wanted to do a press check this way. One thing I'll note while I've got it turned in this angle, the front sight is fiber optic, as you can see, and it's got a bolt. So you can unbolt this front sight and pop it out. You don't need a sight pusher to change the front sight. The back sight is dovetailed, and it is adjustable. Now, this is going to be an unusual departure from my normal thing about sights. I don't like blackout rear sights, but this blackout rear sight has just perfect spacing that makes it easy to actually pull tight groups with it and see with it. So as a rule, I have a hard time pulling tight groups with blackout rear sights. I didn't with this gun. I was basically tightening them right up and pulling tight groups relatively easily. So this particular blackout sight is big enough and the gap is positioned just right that at least with my eyes, it didn't matter that it was blackout. I'm not inclined to want to change the sight on this gun. And usually when I see blackout rear sights, they're on my list to go. That's not true with this one. Now, I do have to put a caveat out. This is, I've mentioned a couple times, this is a competition gun. This isn't a bullseye gun. This isn't a home defense gun. This isn't a concealed carry gun. And the majority of the competitions that are out there are about speed and accuracy, but the accuracy is hitting a zone, putting N number of rounds in a zone, not standing there static, pounding rounds into a bullseye, in a 1-inch circle. That's not what most of the competitions are about. So the purpose of this is quick acquisition, enough accuracy to put it in the appropriate zone, A zone, B zone, etc., and stay on the target, and more importantly, not hit a no-shoot. They have kind of different standards on what I would expect for sights on this. This is consistent with what you would expect. Interesting note is it has no optics capability. It is not optics ready. You would actually have to either replace the sight with an optic plate or mill it. There's also the option of attaching something here. You put it in place of the gas pedal, and then you can put another gas pedal on top of that, and it kind of arches over and gives you a sight mount. But these are not designed from the factory to have an optic on them. You'll also notice there's no rail. And normally that would bother me on a gun this big, but competitions aren't about light lasers and things like that. So that isn't a big deal with what this is designed to be. It has a skeletonized hammer, has a flatty trigger, and the trigger's awesome. When I get to the part about doing the trigger's awesome. But while we're kind of got it like this, let's just talk about the dimensions of it. And to some extent, being what it is, it doesn't matter, but I'll still talk about the dimensions because you might want to know. 8.86 front to back, so it's a big gun, it's a long gun. 5.8 tall, 1.7 inches thick. But again, you're not trying to fit this thing into a holster. That includes the safety ears. It's a wide overall footprint, even without the safety ears. It's a thick gun, and it's 50.3 ounces, and that translates to over 3 pounds. It's not a light gun by any stretch of the imagination. But again, the weight is actually desirable in competition because it helps keep the muzzle down. This is a very flat shooting gun. Very comfortable to shoot, absorb the recoil, especially in 9mm, makes the recoil almost non-existent. Talked about safeties. It does have a thumb safety, as you can see, and it does have a quarter cock position on the hammer, and that's it right there. That's the quarter cock position. This is not meant really as a drop safety, even though if it were dropped, this would prevent the hammer from hitting the firing pin. But this doesn't have any internal drop safeties. As a rule, they do kind of degrade from the trigger a little bit, and in competition, they have very strict safety protocols that you can't even have it loaded when you're wandering around. This is meant to be used when it's muzzle down range and ready, in a controlled environment. This is really meant that if you're thumbing back the hammer and your thumb slips off it and it drops, it doesn't hit the firing pin. But the kind of thing I want to make sure that everybody's aware of, even in the quarter cock position, if the thumb safety's off and I pull the trigger, the hammer will hit the firing pin. It may not have enough energy to set it off, but it will hit the firing pin. So that's more of if, again, if I'm thumbing it back and I drop it, my thumb slips off it, it won't hit the firing pin unintentionally. It is a single action gun. It has to be cocked to function. And the trigger is nothing short of awesome. So there's the take up. That's the entire break, and it's about 1.5 pounds. And I'll do this again, and then I'll show you the reset. So I measured it at 1 pound 5 ounces, so it's actually about 1.25 pounds. So really, if I want to be more accurate, it's about 1.25 pounds. Again, pulled in take up. That's the entire break. Almost all the way out, but all the way out isn't that far, so it's actually a very short reset. And again, the break. Awesome trigger. And one thing I'll note about this trigger, it's very, very consistent. But the trigger it's not a hair trigger. It's very consistent. It's easy to control. So even though it's super light, which is quite nice, it's very controllable. So you won't find yourself scattering rounds around the range with it. You will be able to control it and fire it only when you intend to. One thing I'll note, it comes with a bag of springs. There is a 16-pound spring in it for the recoil spring, and there's an 11 and a 13 in this bag. These are the two longer springs. And then there is a 20-pound mainspring and two 13 and a 16-pound mainspring in the bag. So you can change the springs to suit your ammo. A friend of mine who has been into competition for quite a long time and uses CZs did caution me that if I lighten up the hammer spring, it will make the trigger a little bit lighter, but it'll also make the break a little vaguer. So I like the trigger the way it is. I have no compulsion to change it, but it does come with those springs, especially if you were loading your own ammo and you were loading stronger or weaker or things like that, you may use those springs. So the other thing I'll do is, I haven't done this yet, is kind of show all the angles of the gun. So the front side you've seen quite a bit of. Turn it over so you can see the back side of it. It's not a 1911, so there's no grip safety. And of course you've seen that it's unloaded, but you can see the bull barrel. And there's no barrel bushing. So the bull barrel is kind of a self-bushing. There's not an add-on bushing like a 1911 or some of the other CZ TSs that would have another ring around here that would act as the barrel bushing. And this little piece here that retains the guide rod, you'll see when I take it apart, that comes out. So they redesigned the way the guide rod works to make it easier to disassemble and reassemble, easier to maintain, or clear a malfunction if you had to. Overall, it's a very well-designed gun, which is consistent with CZs. They tend to do a good job with their guns, but it seems like they've kind of gotten this one refined to an art form. So I'm going to go ahead and take it apart, which is relatively easy. You need the hammer back, or at least back a little bit, because you need to bring it back to these two lines line up. And I mentioned the lines, and of course I knew where they were and I saw them, but you might not have seen them. It's this right here. These two lines line up. And then you push out this pin right here. And I tend to use something like a wood block or a channel cleaning tool or something like that that's not going to scratch the gun up. Don't use something metal. And pull this slide, or the guide out, and then the slide just comes off. Now the first thing I do when I get it apart is I put the safety on. What I don't want to do is accidentally stroke that trigger and drop the hammer on the aluminum frame. That wouldn't be good for it. But since I've got the aluminum frame right here, one of the things you'll see is everything is very well machined, very clean. The fire control group is back here, and in typical CZ fashion, the slide guides are on the inside, right in here. So you see them here, and then of course on the other side, as opposed to most of them where they stick up from the frame and they protrude out like a Glock or any of the others, because it's reversed on the CZs. But very well machined, very cleanly done. Now if I move to the slide, you'll see here's the guides on the slide. And it makes the slide sit a little bit lower in the frame. To disassemble it, pull out the recoil spring guide rod. There's the recoil spring, and it's a solid metal guide rod. It's kind of a heavy guide rod. And then I'm going to give a little tap to knock this loose. And then to remove the barrel, I just push the barrel forward and out. So it's kind of almost like a 1911, but not quite. Here is the barrel. Very well machined, very smooth. It's a bull barrel. It's quite heavy. You can't really tell from watching it on a video, but the barrel itself is quite heavy. And it's quite thick here in the bull barrel section of it. And the odd thing is, it's an optical illusion, but if you look at the way the barrel is laid out, you would almost expect the muzzle end to be offset. But it's not. It's well centered, and it's just the way it's machined with, you know, this hanging down below the center line and the top part above the center line, which doesn't stand out as much. It kind of makes it look like it's offset, but it's not. It's very well centered. Polished feed ramp. It's typical CZ75 style feed ramp, and very, very well machined. Nice sharp rifling. It is conventional rifling. But no chatter marks, no tool marks. In fact, it's so shiny in there that it's actually kind of hard to focus on because it just reflects. But it's very well done. Reassembly is relatively easy, but it's a little bit different. I almost forgot that I didn't actually show you the rest of the slide. So before I actually put it back together, I'll show you the slide. Very well machined, very clean. Polished, machine polished in here. And show you the business end is wide open. This leaves room for the muzzle or the back end of the barrel for this to come out. And then when I put that piece back in, I'll be able to lock the guide rod in place. So now I will put it back together. And another note I'll make is they've changed a little bit of the geometry and through here as other parts of this barrel. So not only is it a bull barrel, but they've made some other changes to manage the recoil impulse and make it smoother and make the gun shoot flatter. So I drop the barrel in. This thing is a little different than what you've seen on most guns. It needs to go in sitting like this. So I'm going to sit it on the barrel, and you'll see it just sits there. And then the easiest way to put it in place is just take the guide rod and push it, and it'll sit in place. It just kind of slides in relatively easy. Now putting the guide rod in place can be a little bit tricky because you have to line it up and you kind of got to feed it through the hole. But once you do it, it goes in fairly easily. And then you center it and make sure that this pin snaps into this little cutout. And I'm going to turn it towards my face and make sure it's centered before I put it back together the rest of the way. No, it wasn't. Now it's centered. You heard that click, and now you can see it's clearly centered where it wasn't before. Now, putting it back on is a little bit trickier simply because you can't see as well what you're doing. So you kind of got to be careful to line it up. On something like a Glock and stuff like that, with the guides sticking up, it just seems to be easier to see. And it goes back a little bit tight. You have to remember to turn the safety off. And then bring it back again, line up those two lines, and put this in place. If you have trouble getting it to slide in, make sure, just tap the barrel and make sure the barrel hasn't slid forward. But it's slid in, and it's functional and operational again. It's a little different than what you're used to. It's not quite a 1911. Of course, it's based on a CZ 75, so it's got attributes of the CZ 75, but it's not quite a CZ 75 from a takedown and reassembly procedure, but it's close. It's not difficult, it's just different. So you kind of got to get used to it. So one of the things that you look at something like this has an MSRP of $21.99. And when I see them, I tend to see them well over that. These are not guns you're very frequently going to pick up at a discount somewhere. When they're available, people know what they have, and they sell it at a price that's consistent with that. But they're worth it if you have a need for something like this. If you're looking for your next carry gun or home defense gun, don't look at this. This isn't what this is about. You're looking at a competition gun, a really nice range day gun. This was an absolute pleasure to shoot. It is so flat, so smooth. The recoil impulse on it, like I mentioned earlier, is almost non-existent. It's an absolute pleasure to shoot. I would actually say, as much as I like to shoot 1911s, this was actually nicer to shoot than a 1911, and that's kind of saying something, because 1911s are really awesome to shoot, especially at 9mm. So it's definitely worth picking up if your budget permits it, and you are looking for a range day gun. If nothing else, it's just nice to look at. Beyond that, if you like our videos, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, click that bell up there to be notified if you do. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Player, Rumble. We're pretty much everywhere. And thank you.